I'm Guy Jubert with Wilson Combat. Today we're going to do terminal performance testing on water jugs, comparing the 300 Hammer to 6.8 SPC, 300 Blackout, and 223 Remington. For the 223 Remington, we used a 64 grain power point. For the 300 Blackout and the 300 Hammer, we used a 125 grain Sierra Pro Hunter. For the 6.8 SPC, we used a 115 grain Federal Fusion. There are 13 different projectiles for the 300 Hammer with 16 different available loads from Wilson Combat, ranging from 95 grains to 150 grains. We started off the day shooting the 300 Hammer at water jugs just to kind of get a baseline of what effect it would have on the water jugs, and then we could use the slow motion camera to compare the damage from the 300 Hammer to the other rounds. Since the 300 Blackout and the 300 Hammer are both using the same projectile, we'll start with that side-by-side comparison on how they perform on the water jugs. As you can see, the 300 Hammer has much more punch and disperses water much more drastically than the 300 Blackout. The 300 Blackout was primarily designed to be subsonic. It does have some supersonic loads available. The 300 Hammer, although, all the loads are supersonic. So what we did in the comparison was use both supersonic loads from the 300 Hammer and the 300 Blackout. When we chronoed the 300 Blackout versus the 300 Hammer, we averaged 340 feet per second faster out of the Hammer than the Blackout, which is 16% more velocity, which equates to 35% more muzzle energy. Even though the velocity of the 300 Hammer and the 223 Remington are the same, a 30 caliber projectile coming down range versus a 22 caliber projectile packs much greater of a punch. And as you can see from the video, it blows the first two jugs completely off the table. And the thing that caught my eye was how quickly the third jug is emptying in the 30 cal shot versus the 22 caliber shot. And that is due to the 30 caliber entry and exit hole. Some differences in the 6.8 SPC and the 300 Hammer are the case itself. Whereas on the 300 Hammer, if you have a 223 or a 5.56, all you simply need to convert that gun into a 300 Hammer is a barrel, the proper gas tube length, and a different magazine. Whereas the 6.8 requires a completely different bolt because of the size of the case head. Although the 6.8 SPC has more punch than the 223 Remington or 5.56 NATO, when it comes to terminal performance, bigger is usually better. The Hammer has bullet weights all the way up to 150 grains, with the largest 6.8 SPC bullet coming in at 120 grains. When chronoing the 300 Hammer versus the 6.8 SPC, there is very little difference in the velocities, but when we look at muzzle energy, the 300 Hammer comes in with an 11% advantage over the 6.8 SPC. The advantage increases when you consider that the 300 Hammer goes all the way up to a 150 grain bullet. The other difference is the magazine capacity, where you have the option of all the way up to 30 rounds in a magazine for a 300 Hammer, where you're limited to 25 rounds maximum capacity on a 6.8 SPC. Since it was a nice day and we already had the camera set up, we decided to hammer some watermelons.